Okay, who needs a living trust? This one, who needs a living trust? I'm going to speak from the perspective of here in Arizona only. So, this is what we do. We only practice in Arizona. So don't quote me if you're in another state. Okay, in Arizona, we have one of the worst probate systems. There's two kinds of probate in Arizona. There's one that happens while you're alive, and then there's one that happens after you die. That's the one most people know about. The one that happens while we're alive is horrible in Arizona. Super expensive. It's called a guardianship. Lawyers get involved, the court's involved, there's investigators and doctors, all these people appointed by the court. Tens and tens of thousands of dollars get wasted here. And the court's basically in charge of your life. Even if they appoint one of your family members as the guardian, the court's really in charge. So who in Arizona needs a trust? Well, number one, I think anybody who has kids, especially minor kids, you should have a trust because you don't want them getting any money when they're minors, right? They can't actually. The court, or not the court, nobody is allowed to write them a check. They can't cash it. Somebody has to be over 18 to cash it on their behalf. And you want to make sure there's some protections around who's cashing that it's really going to be used for the kids. Number two, if you have a blended family situation, holy moly, yes, you definitely should consider trust because it's very likely that you may want to make sure your spouse, if you're the first to go, you want to make sure your spouse is taken care of, but you may also want to make sure that something is there left for your kids if you have kids from a prior relationship. And there's a little bit of potential tension there, and so a trust is the only way you can really resolve that and make that work well. So minor kids, blended family. If you own real estate, I definitely recommend a trust because number one, the only thing you could do is a beneficiary deed, which passes it, which gives it to somebody after you die. That can avoid probate with a beneficiary deed. But what you can't do on a beneficiary deed is say who's allowed to sell it or take care of it if you're disabled or if you're in the hospital, if you have Alzheimer's or something. If that's you, even if you're married, right, your spouse doesn't, in your joint, they can't sell it. And a lot of times they'll need to. So there's no other way to deal with that in Arizona unless you use a trust. A power of attorney just is not very secure, and I definitely don't rely on it. We have too many horror stories where somebody tried to rely on a power of attorney to do real estate and it just didn't work. And we ended up having to go back to that court living probate guardianship process. So I wouldn't rely on it. So if you have real estate in Arizona and really of any equity whatsoever, if you have real estate in multiple states, holy cow, yes, because then you're just looking at potential probate problems in multiple states or having to deal with all kinds of stuff. A trust, we work with attorneys nationwide on this stuff. A trust is the best way to do it across the country when you've got multiple pieces of real estate. If you're a small business owner or a big business owner, either way, you're a business owner, you need to look at how your ownership shares are going to be managed and transferred and voted basically if you're not around. And again, same problem. There's that problem of while we're alive, if we're disabled or in the hospital or long-term illness, plus after we pass away. That problem just doesn't go away unless you use a trust. Business owner, what else did we say? Minor kids. If you're in a life partner situation, so Arizona doesn't legally recognize that as any status, but we still see a lot of clients who are life partners and they've lived together for a long time. They're not married, but they're committed. And so in that situation, really the only way to make sure each other's taken care of, actually you each have to set up your own individual trusts. There's not a good way in Arizona to do a joint trust for this purpose. So you do individual trust, and in there you spell out what your wishes are to take care of each other. And you also want to spell out your wishes about each other making medical decisions. That's really critical. Those are the big times when I say, yeah, a trust you got to consider a trust. It's simple. It's easy to put together. You don't have to make it complicated. Really, it's the simplest way to take care of your family and protect them. I mean, that's what we do. We protect families, and I believe we should protect families. So this is a way, if you believe that, for you to take care of that. Hope that makes sense.